I'm Jeanette, the co-artistic director and pianist here, and I just wanted to know how many people are here for the first time? Awesome, awesome. Yes, from New Jersey of all places. But thank you for coming and welcome. If you don't know, Garthneo means new home in Welsh. So that's sort of the vibe we're giving off here, and a lot of you feel like family. Now, this is the final concert of our Winter Chill series, so some of you might be wondering what's next. We will be having concerts in April. We will also have concerts every week in May, and we will be having Archduke weekend, so that's exciting. And this year, we are actually adding dancing to Saturday night, so that's something new. And Garthneo Piano Quartet is also going on tour, finally, and we're doing Beckley, West Virginia in March, also Lynchburg, and we're doing a residency at Bucknell University. But most importantly, we're going to the UK this summer. So there are actually spots still available for that. I think there are some forms up by the table. And see, if you see right there, Tammy is wonderfully gesturing to it. So if you're interested in going to the UK, it's part of the Art and Architecture Tour. And it's really, really cool to be able to have those venues. Lastly, I would just like to say that it has been just a wonderful February to actually get to play and see everyone here live. It's been the highlight of my February, and I hope it's been joyful for you guys as well. So thank you. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Andrew Mcknight. He is many, many things. He is a poet, he's a singer, he's a songwriter, he's a guitarist. You can see he's got a compendium of guitars here, which you will all use, also Native American flute. And just a really great guy, so I hope you enjoy.
Thank you. Wow. Can I take your picture? Because it feels like it's been forever since I've seen human bodies in 3D that didn't live with me. I'm so happy that y'all are here. Thank you so much for coming. I promise it'll be better than a root canal. Have my word on it. In this lovely space. And I want to say hello to everyone who is watching us through the ones and zeros, the satellites, and all of the other things. I have a friend who lives in Denmark, but she's Estonian. And I realized today that this is a very good time for European friends and family to join in. So if you want to wave at one of the cameras at some point to say hello to our friends and family across the pond, you go right ahead and do that. How high is this mountain that I've fallen down? How far have I tumbled to be here? And how long must I climb to see sweet sun again? Out of this valley of despair. How many miles more to Calvary? How many lonesome nights till I find that star? Set my course straight and true again. And how high is this mountain that I'm falling down? How far have I tumbled to be here? How long must I climb to see sweet sun again? Out of this valley of despair, out of this valley of despair. Thank you. Thank you so much. It has been something, hasn't it? Thank you ever so much for the gift of today. I've come to thinking about all of the things in the before times, the things that I never took for granted, but surely never will again. It seems like the uncertainty of the times that we're living in might be the hardest thing of all, just not being able to know or to plan, and maybe those illusions of control over anything but how we look at the world. My family and I had a pretty hard week last week, and I have a soon-to-be 15-year-old daughter, and your prayers are greatly appreciated on my behalf. Actually, she's a good kid and she might be watching, so I better mind my P's and Q's. But we live about, 40 miles from Shenandoah. So whenever things seem to be like we just gotta do something, the something that we do is to hop in the van and drive up to the mountain. And I don't know what it is. All three of us are very different people, and yet the mountain speaks to us in some way that just heals all of that stuff. Something bigger, older, more beautiful than anything I could have ever possibly imagined. Sometimes up there at sunset on the Skyline Drive, it's almost like you forget what time you're in. Only that it's sunset. No idea what year, what century. Those moments out of time, frozen in time, for all time. Will there be another Ansel Adams, American original, sculptor of shadow and light? Will another have the patience to await the perfect moment when the elements and angles are just right? Ansel Adams was no hero, cursed with pride and foible, but like any Einstein you find, take everything you can, serve him a film in format, wizard of the lens, freezing magic in a frame of stone and sand. And in a range of light, a gentleman revealed his heart, showed us treasures God in plain sight hid. And in a sacred setting, shutter clicking on the wind, let us see like Ansel Adams did. A moment is so precious in our hurried rush lives. Seems the only way to save it is hanging over the focused on the destination. Is it still a thing of beauty if we move too fast to see? And in a range of light, a gentleman revealed his heart, showed us treasures God in plain sight. In a sacred setting, shutter clicking on the wind, let us see like Ansel Adams did. Now I'm a man who chases shadows. I've been known to talk to ghosts, and I strain to hear echoes of the past. His reflections in still waters, spires soaring to the sky, oh, remind me that this heartbreak will not last. In a range of light, a gentleman revealed his heart, showed us treasures God in plain sight hid. And in a sacred setting, shutter clicking on the wind, let us see like Ansel Adams did. Will there be another Ansel Adams, American original, sculptor of shadow and light? Thank you so much. Wow. I mean, just the feeling of air moving between people's hands and the sounds that people's hands make. Oh my goodness, I am so very grateful. And hello to everybody who is watching on the internet today. I know that our world has, even in our isolation, gotten a whole lot smaller in these last 2 years. And if there's any good thing about that, it's the folks who have grandkids and great-grandkids learning how to Zoom and FaceTime. Says the guy who lives 500 miles away from his parents. So, I'm going to guess that I am not the only person in this room who got curious at some point and spit in a tube to find out where I came from. How many of y'all have done one of those Ancestry DNA tests? Yeah. So, I was lucky. I talked both my parents into doing it. And there weren't any great big surprises. Not that I was disappointed. I was sort of relieved that all the stories that my grandmother had told me were fairly true. But in fact, what turned out to be kind of surprising was that a whole lot of the stuff that my grandmother told me that I went, yeah, right, actually did turn out to be true. And I thought, if it hadn't been for my grandmother giving me the gateway drug by making all of us grandkids write out our Revolutionary War heritage at some point, I probably might not have gotten the bug quite the same way. But when somebody hands you the Ancestry digital rabbit hole starter kit, as it were, and there you go, I can say that it was probably all my grandmother's fault, and I'm kind of grateful in the end. So the short story is that my ancestors hijacked my singer-songwriter career over the last few years, and what wound up happening was not only an album, but a book about the experience of meeting family across the ocean and all of the things that one does when you're sort of trying to figure out who am I and where I came from. And the one thing that sort of strikes me when I step back from it, and I've got these family trees from my wife and I hanging on the wall, and every now and then it just occurs to me, it bugs me that there are a couple of blank spots here and there that I don't know anything about. And yet, those blank spots are just as essential to us being here as the ones we know and the stories we know. I got to thinking about it, whatever faults and foibles my ancestors had, the one thing I can be grateful for is that they managed to procreate before they passed on into their own afterwards. And I got to thinking, you know, I should be grateful for that. There's a lot of mystery to be untangled still, but somehow or other, I feel like maybe someday it might be me that I hope gets remembered. I've been trying to touch the past. I want to know just why I am. Reach back through the mist of time. So much I want to understand. You were a child once like me, full of wonder, full of pain. I know sometimes that you were scared. I know that sometimes you were brave. This is the only life I've known. In part you gave it to me. Look behind or look ahead. You are woven in the thread in my web of mystery. I'm still trying to touch the past while the present slips away. But I've got to know how your heart goes before those pages fade to gray. You were old once like me. I wish that I could see your face. No one else knows what's past our eyes. Hurt and anger, love and grace. This is the only life I've known. In part you gave it to me. Look behind or look ahead. You are woven in the thread in my web of mystery. Someday, centuries from now, like coaxing amber into flame, since I've left a verse or two behind, someone might still speak my name. Someone might still speak my name. Someone might still speak my name. Thank you so much. You're probably thinking to yourself, doesn't look like a fair fight up there. That boy's outnumbered. Yes, but I intend to go out in a blaze of glory if I can, anyway. And I haven't had an excuse to take them out and share them with people in a while, so I'm more than happy to take one for the team for y'all today. You know, I have to say, everything is so different now. And yet, the idea of we humans, when I think about our ancestors, I think about the same things, like what sorts of things they did in their daily lives. You know, there's a name on your family tree, and there's a date on either end of it, and there's a dash in the middle, and maybe there's a place, and maybe there's a little bit. But they did things just like us. They got up in the morning and they fed themselves. They foraged for food, did whatever they had to do. They had kids and they worried themselves to death about them. And they had teenagers. And I just think that one of the things that's become hard in this uber-connected world that we live in is that it seems that it's become a whole lot easier rather than finding our empathy. We find it easy to other. And I hope that we might be able to work on that empathy deficit just a little bit. After all, it's hard to know a person's story unless you've walked in their shoes. In the darkness, in the desert, searchlights glare and there's gunshots and shouting, but somehow I slipped by, only God knows why. The trucker dropped me at the Arkansas line. Where I come from is where the drugs run, and the men come with money and lust. Living, hope God's forgiving. For I left my family for this one chance at hope, and I have dreams just like you. Oh, if I let you walk in these shoes, would you be here? No one trusts me to do more than clean, but I've got secrets. I've learned English. Someday the name on a door will be mine, and I have dreams just like you. Oh, if I let you walk in these shoes, would you be here? Collecting campaign cash to build a wall behind them, but I do work in wood, dirty jobs in gold, and all I ask is the right to be human, and I have dreams just like you. Oh, if I let you walk in these shoes, would you be here? So I never set out to be a songwriter. When I was 15, playing my Strat in my bedroom, dreaming of rock and roll stardom. If you had told me that I could have a life in music and it would look like what it does, I would have thought that's pretty weird. But okay, I guess it's cool. One of the most cool things that I have been fortunate enough to be blessed with in this life in music is that my friend Mac Bailey invited me to work with wounded warriors at one of his songwriting retreats a couple years ago. Mac was a well-known folk singer around the country, but in particular for his work with the hard travelers around the Washington area. And he decided to go to school, midlife, for music therapy, and devoted his life to helping our combat veterans reprocessing, reframing, rewiring their trauma through songwriting. And I said, man, that sounds like a really big job. And you're asking me to help with that? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, well, then I'll figure it out as we go. And I got to say, it has been joyful, nearly sacred kind of work, to be able to sit with somebody and to hear their stories like that. I'm so much about the human connection of one-to-one, and to be able to understand what someone else's experience has been like is really a blessing unto itself. But this is sort of like, his retreats are sort of like a college course in a weekend, because you meet the veterans on Saturday morning and you get a couple hours with each one-on-one, and you work with two of them. And then basically they go and do other therapy things. They get gifted these beautiful Breedlove guitars as part of the retreat and stuff. And it's really, there's like 6 songwriters working with 12 vets, something like that. And then you go home at the end of the afternoon, and I go back to my make-a-living room, my songwriting Frankenstein laboratory, and kind of throw the whole thing together and try to turn what they told me into something that might be meaningful and memorable to them. And then go back the next morning, and we spend a couple more hours and shine things up. And then there's a concert on Sunday night for their family and friends. And then poof, away you go. So the very first one of these retreats that I did, I got to work with this fellow from Puerto Rico. And he was a Iraq and Afghanistan vet. And he worked in mortuary affairs. Now, this fella just had such a sense of being an umbrella over the people who worked for him, those that were entrusted to his care. He was very much an abuelo, very much a grandfather, and the way that he would extend himself over everyone left him thin and very vulnerable. And every one of these vets that I've worked with, at some point, has reached that moment of darkness where they were ready to say, I need to check out. I need to go. And something pulled each one of them back. Someone pulled each one of them back. And in his case, it was his wife. She, after the adrenaline of all of the crisis wore off, she said, you can't do anything about the past and what happened the same way that you can do things about what's here. You have a family. You have a new mission now. Duty calls in many ways. I chose to serve the fallen, sent home to Dover Air Force Base, awaiting love's final calling. Do your job, get each detail right, and honor guarded with all my might, 'cause I'm gonna make sure that you get home. These eyes have seen families cry, these arms bear the reasons why, this heart that survives somehow, to take a new mission now. This is my mission now. Didn't know I'd haunt my dreams till I found that I was falling, wrapped up in an angel's wings. When my death came calling, she said, my love keeps your heart held tight, and honor guarded with all my might, 'cause I'm gonna make sure that you're okay. These eyes have seen families cry, these arms baby boy sleeps gently. He wears mi abuelo's name. Now this grandfather's aching heart, once again broken open and changed. Family means everything to me. A love I guard with all that I can be. And I'm gonna make sure you're safe each night. These eyes have seen families cry. These arms bear the reasons why. This heart that survives somehow to take a new mission now. But this is my mission now. To take a new mission now. But this is my mission now. Thank you. So my parents taking that DNA test had a whole lot of unintended consequences. And one of the ones that I'm sort of amused by is looking back on it was when their test results came in and you see all of these different people who match you, and I start figuring out which set of great-grandparents they go to and all of that. I knew that my mom's family was a lot Irish. And I knew that they had come during the famine or right after. But I have to admit, I never, for a moment, had thought about the families that we left behind. And here, in my mom's DNA matches, are people who very clearly live in Ireland and have never left. And for the first time, I realized that my story had two pieces that needed to be fit together. To encounter these pieces of oneself make you sort of contemplate a whole lot of different things for the first time. But for me, it was the fact that I'd always thought about my immigrant ancestors and never about the fact that they were the leaving and back home were the left behind. Left a home they'd known for strangers sure, hope and hunger for one chance more. Irish blessings in American weight, glasses raised to the hearts that break, gathered at the door to see them go. Of the rest of their lives will never know. Hold on tight, storms on the ocean. Hold on tight, storms on the ocean. The door slammed in your face with the love that remains. Left behind, never let go in my heart and mind of all their prayers and desperate dreams. Left behind, forever change once you cross that line. The great divide that lies between leaving and left behind. The packet in his belly is his only chance at someone else's promised land. But one foot down in front of the other, one foot down in front of the other. Hey, line the wall rising in your face with the love that remains. Left behind, I never let go in my heart and mind of all their prayers and desperate dreams. Left behind, forever change once you cross that line. The just begun. But time is a river, and the river flows through a mother's love, told to let it go. Don't turn back even if you want to. Can't turn back even if you want to. Hey, the way ahead is yours to claim with the love that remains. Left behind, and never let go in my heart and mind of all their prayers and desperate dreams. Left behind, forever change once you cross that line. The great divide that lies between the leaving and the left behind. Leaving and the left behind. The leaving and the left behind. The leaving and the left behind. Leaving and the left behind. Thank you so much. So, I mentioned my grandmother's family history. My grandmother has this great, big, beautiful bush of a family tree that stretches back farther than I can have the patience to sort out. I do remember sitting there one night with if you have colonial ancestry, you share it with tens of millions of other people. And so if you spend any time on Ancestry.com chasing those little shaky leaf hints back into the past, and you go down the rabbit hole, and before you know it, it's 2 a.m, your whiskey glass is empty, and you're in the 1500s in England someplace. And I thought to myself, I don't really think this is the place that I want to be. I think I want to get out of 1500s England. I think I'll go back to my own time. But in the middle of my grandmother's big, beautiful bush of a family tree are these 2 sticks. Family names, people that she revered, whose ancestry ends like in the mid-1800s, and I can't find anything that goes any farther back. And so, I'm stubborn. My granddad was a Scot. I'm stubborn. Now, stubborn can be good sometimes, and it can be obsessive-compulsive sometimes, and I tend to not walk the tightrope very well between them. So I got kind of mad one night. I was at my parents' house, and I had my laptop, and here's this blank spot staring at me from my grandmother's family tree, and I'm like, you know what? I am not going to bed until I know who this guy is. And so I started playing around Googling his name. Now, here's the problem. As a 9-year-old, when Grandma had us write out that family lineage, my handwriting sucked. And it still does. And so I couldn't really make out what I had written all that well, and it was kind of a funky name. I knew his last name was Culver, but I was trying all kinds of stuff. And finally, I hit on it. I don't know how I missed it. I should have known right away. Artis. A-R-E-T-A-S. Why didn't I think of that? There, Artis Culver. And boom! In a moment, I am staring into the eyes of my 3 times great-grandfather, Artis Culver. That's how we met on the Connecticut Public Radio website. They had done a story about this exhibition of photographs hanging in the Connecticut State Library of the state Civil War veterans who'd been imprisoned at Andersonville. And his picture is the one on the story. And I'm like, whew, dang. Thus began a 5-year walk with my great-great-great-grandfather, retracing his steps 3 weeks after he joined the Union Army in the summer of 1862, across the battlefield at Antietam, where his unit was never supposed to see any duty at all. They'd had one drill with these ancient Belgian rifles, and where do they find themselves at the most critical moment of the day? Guarding General Burnside's left flank, crossing the cornfield as they tried to push the Confederate Army back into the Potomac River. And they were the ones that met the full-on assault of the Confederate Army's best troops that just arrived from Harper's Ferry on practically the double time, 17 miles in 8 hours. They never broke stride when they slammed into those kids, and they scattered like rabbits. And for years after the war, a whole lot of those kids from Bristol, Connecticut bore the scars of being blamed for a civil war that went on for 3 uncivil years longer. I found that Artis Culver was lying beneath a broken stone in his hometown of Bristol, Connecticut, my dad's hometown, where the Civil War memorial for their city's dead is up on the hill, and his broken stone was within sight of it. So my ancestral journey led through filling out a form at the VA and finally having a ceremony on Veterans Day 2019 to rededicate a new stone for his grave. I kind of thought that Artis Culver deserved a little bit more than a chapter in the book. This is his story. My name is Artis Culver, the summer of '62. Traded in my papers for a uniform in blue. I took Abe Lincoln's bounty and Union swore to save. What I've seen since that day haunts me to my grave. We were farmers, merchants, clockmakers, and I knew all their names. Some escaping trouble, still others seeking fame. Proudly marched down Main Street while Bristol rang her bells. None would know our destiny, to glory or to hell. Oh, I can't escape the dream. Oh, don't you hear this scream? Won't I will kill no more. Oh, let them fight their civil war. Put on a train to Maryland, we put a single drill to Antietam's killing fields. Upon that cornstalk hill, we faced their fiercest legion and withering hail of lead. Terror ran while rebel yells echoed in our heads. We dug praise for many days, watched by lifeless eyes, marched with rifles at our backs and hands that fought at our side. Little Mac called it victory, but for failure we were blamed. If I might survive this war, I vowed to clear my name. Oh, I can't escape the dreams. Oh, don't you hear this scream? Won't I will kill no more. Oh, let them fight their civil war. Four nights surrounded, the siege at Plymouth town. Our white rag of surrender stopped the shells from raining down. To Andersonville through gates of hell, this deadline we had crossed. They paroled my skin and bones, the soul had long been lost. I am Artis Culver, my breath is fading fast. Tell my wife and children, love them to the last. The curse I leave this world with before the fighting's done is those that vote to start the wars, be those that face the guns. Oh, I can't escape the dream. Oh, don't you hear this scream? Oh, I will kill no more. case you were wondering. I know it's been a while since we all did this. Oh, it's so good to do it again. But I usually have to tell audiences up in New England and stuff like this, but I guess this ought to be the pandemic caveat. That if you feel your little inner woohoo creeping up and wanting to get out, it's okay. You can let it. And if you do, I might too. So, I come from a very little village in a very much overgrown county. I live at the foot of the Blue Ridge in western Loudoun County. My little home was founded by Quakers back in the 1700s. And we still cling to a lot of the old ways, and it's really pretty cool. And like the backbone of the internet is like in our county, and so too is this history of, you know, I had a guitar student who is the 10th generation of her family to live in the same house. I guess that doesn't happen every day and in every place. And I think to myself, it's pretty special. And you know, back in the before times, we would do things like gather in the center of the village and do the door-to-door Christmas caroling thing on everybody's porches and all that, and then post about it on our Facebook page like any good 18th century village would in the 21st century, I guess. And I just find that there's something oddly comforting, I guess, about living with the past so close. In fact, the Quaker meeting cemetery is just through the woods and across the road, and there are 2 historic black churches whose cemeteries butt up against my backyard. So we have a saying that the dead outnumber the living in Lincoln by about 5 to 1, and it's probably a conservative estimate. It's probably more than that. But there's just something about those old ways. Oh, come on. Some one of you strings has to be in tune, literally. I mean, let's pick one and tune everybody else to it, maybe? You guys haven't been out for a while either. I guess I ought to give you a little break. I'm watching for the magic seagull for those of you who like to tune instruments. Somebody asked me once if I ever played the 12-string guitar. And right here is why I don't. My patience runs out at about 3 strings. There we go. Anyway, let me take you home to Lincoln. We close our road on the 4th of July for the kids to ride by. The streamers on their bikes, red, blue, and white, let the judges decide. Bring a dish to share, your favorite folding chair, try to stay cool. We read the famous words, just like we heard since we were kids at school. In my little town, renamed for Honest Abe, somehow it became where I put roots down. Graveyard stones had more than bones in the red clay ground. These sunken gravel roads wind back in time and slowly disappear. The last dairy farm keeps holding on another year. In my little town, in my little town, when the fire breaks out, when the roof caves in, when the snow's piled high, times are worse they've been. The progress of the present brings the future crashing down. Stand up with each other here in our little town. Try not to blink and miss our little town. Those holiday nights, cold winter nights, herald angels miles around our little town. My dad is a musician, plays the piano. My earliest childhood memories are of a band rehearsing in my basement once a week because my daddy was a school teacher, and in those days you had to moonlight to make enough money if you wanted to actually have a roof over your head and all of that. And so he's somewhat reluctantly, somewhat enthusiastically, depending on his mood, learned a bunch of my songs and sat in with me at a bunch of my shows over the years when I've been up in New England on the road and stuff. And in all those years, I never had recorded anything with him. And here I am writing this album of songs and this book that's coming a lot from his family history. I'm like, Dad's 83 now. If I don't record with him now, if there wasn't a better opportunity than now, it ain't coming, So, I sent him some demos of some of the songs, some of the ones I played for you tonight. And he called me about a week later, and I said, so, find anything you like? He's like, oh no, I'm not playing any of that. You and those oddball measures here, and, what is this 1, 2, 3, go stuff? I'm like, there's either 2 or there's 3, but anyway. So, I said, well, all right. Then I'll tell you what, let me write something. Let me write something that's a little bit more in your wheelhouse. Now, my dad loves to play jazz and blues, but he also loves to sit at his Hammond B3 organ and rock out to the Allman Brothers and Leonard Skinner, which is what I found him doing the last time I visited them a couple months ago. Dad's in the basement rocking along to a CD of stuff he assembled. So I went back and I wrote this tune, and I had him listen to it, and I said, I picked out some of your favorite changes and all that kind of stuff, and he said, yeah, I like it real well. I said, I haven't paid any attention to the words, I just like the chords and the melody and all that. I'm like, okay, that's good. So I'm still not sure if he's listened to it yet, but anyway, it's called Sons and Fathers. We are all born screaming, naked and afraid. Looking back, it's funny seeing all those plans I made. We'd throw our balls and race our bikes, sometimes dare to dream. Manhood ain't as hard as fathers make it seem. I guess it's just the way of things. We take our place in line, like our fathers and their fathers did when it was their time. Now we're slowly trading places. Suppose those are the rules. For Father Time won't suffer any fools. And all those things we cannot say, we're perfectly imperfect at getting out of our own way. We do not, we will not, could not go. We know it's true. Nothing else gets quite as tangled up in knots as sons and fathers do. forget the blame we earn, hoping what we teach is what they need to learn. And all those things we cannot say, we're perfectly imperfect at getting out of our own way. We do not, and we will not, could not, though we know it's true. Nothing else gets quite as tangled up in knots as sons and fathers do. The observant among you might be wondering, what sort of strange cultural ritual has this guy got going on with this brick? The great table straightener. You know, I was talking earlier about how all of those people on your family tree, right? So one of those nights of adventuring in my grandmother's tree, I found that the line went back to a 10 times great-grandfather by the name of Nathaniel Turner, a sea captain and one of the original settlers, apparently, of New Haven, Connecticut, back in the 1640s. And all of that would have been lost on me, like everything else about having hundreds of people that you're related to back in that area in that time. Except for the fact that one of the shaky leaf hints was a link to the poem by Longfellow called The Phantom Ship, which apparently Nathaniel Turner went down on. I sat there for a couple minutes, pondering what I had just discovered. And I have to say the first cogent thought that I had about it was, I'm sure glad that he had kids before he got on that boat. And that's the craziest thing. We each have 4,096 10 times great-grandparents. Now, there's a whole lot of people who might have done a lot of double duty in there over the course of the time in small villages and all of that. But in theory, 4,096 places at that 10 times grandparent spot on your tree. Now think about this. If you were to, if now I was to go and pick out 4,096 random people and tell you that 500 years from now there would be somebody who shared all of their DNA, would you take the bet? Don't lie to me now. We just met each other. So if you think about the fact that you can go back in time and find these people coupled up, and here you are. Think about it. You and I are miracles because we beat bazillion to 1 odds to be here. Ain't that cool? I think that's cool. Then again, I'm easily amused. After all, I've got a brick up here for fun. Now all I got to do is get it to hold this upright. Anyway, I feel fortunate that I can have these little glimpses of what their lives might have been like. You know, every now and then you get a sort of a visceral moment of like just a smell or a taste or something that sort of like connects you to something that you just read. And I got to thinking, you know, we've all had ancestors that go way farther back than that, and we'll never know anything about them. And I got to daydreaming about them one time. And that's how songs are born. 2,000 years ago today, a farmer walked his fields, 2,000 years ago today, two young lovers kissed, laughed and made a wish beneath a shooting star glow. Somewhere in a far and distant future, millennia beyond imagining, as time takes away what will remain of how we lived and loved today. "2,000 years ago today, anger hurled a stone to break another's bones and keep some fool upon a throne. 2,000 years ago today, a cog in a war machine drew his last breath on a distant plain as he dreamed of home. Somewhere in a far and distant future, millennia beyond imagining, as time takes away what will remain of how we lived and loved today. "2,000 years ago today, a mama hushed her little ones, kissed them on the head and tucked them into bed, and turned her face toward the sky for blessings from on high. Pray to guide them safe on the unknown path ahead. She wondered someday in a far and distant future, millennia beyond imagining, as time takes away what will remain of how we lived and loved today, of how we live and love Yeah, you. Okay, done with the brick for now. Most of the mysteries have been answered. I've played them all at some point or another, and I'm still standing. Okay, well, I was sitting for a little bit. I want to take a moment to thank everyone here who has made me so welcome, both in the getting ready for today and for being here today. And I especially want to shout out a hello and a thank you to the Virginia Commission for the Arts. Over these last 2 years of the pandemic, I've worked on a couple of really cool projects with folks from the Arts Council, and we've sat and talked and brainstormed about all kinds of things, and we put together this virtual showcase last year. And If you haven't had a chance to see it yet, it's on the Commission's YouTube channel, and there's a whole lot of incredibly diverse, wonderful talent that calls this Commonwealth home, and I'm honored to be a part of it. But it was also kind of cool to get a chance to know some of the people who make art come to places like this that sometimes may not be able to, in a town like this, to have an art center like this doing the things that it's doing is a remarkable and rare treasure. So the Commission gets my deep gratitude for sure. And if any of y'all are watching, thanks for being here today too. Grew up on that mountain farm down Nelson County way. Wish I lived to see it again. That is not my fate. For on my 16th birthday, war marched all around our land, and I joined Virginia's volunteers, Robert Lee's command. 2 days passed upon the march toward Yankees in the front. I knew my trusty rifle, the difference was the hunt. We smashed into their backside up Loudon County way. I'll not soon forget 3 boys in blue, they sent to early graves. Down the road to Appomattox, where bullets whine like bees, cut blossoms from the trees. On the road to Appomattox, turn boys into men, men into memories. Y'all can sing it next time if you like. We fell back from Gettysburg with callous feet and heart. Saw most of my company fall in Pickett's cursed charge. Winter spent on valley farms with little food or warmth, and hellfire came with spring advance and the smell of burning corn. Down the road to Appomattox, where bullets whine like bees, cut blossoms from the trees. On the road to Appomattox, turn boys into men, men into memories. Perilous nighttime retreat, the fall of Petersburg. The city burned around us, fed rebels charging hard. I heard them call the chaplain, they heard me call on God. What a reward awaited me was not far off. Down the road to Appomattox, where bullets whine like bees, cut blossoms from the trees. On the road to Appomattox, turn boys into men, men into memories. There were battles won on both sides, the history books confirm, but no one ever wins at war. The last loser asks for terms. Down the road to Appomattox, where bullets whine like bees, cut blossoms from the trees. On the road to Appomattox, turn boys into men, men into memories. So I'll play two more songs for you. And I'm saying that to the folks on the internet too, because at least I get to visit with them in here, and I don't get to do that with y'all at home. So you'll have to join me next time I'm doing a live stream. And in fact, y'all could join me the next time I'm doing a live stream. Come on over to my house, bring your own everything, including your own couch. Sit in the living room. I'm actually doing one on Sunday next week, March the 6th, I think. And it's an afternoon show, too. I usually do them like on a Thursday night or something. But anyway, I have CDs and the books back there and all of that. Come visit me at andrewmcknight.net on the virtual front porch anytime you like. I would be more than happy to make you welcome any old time. Most of all, I am so deeply grateful to get to sing for you today, in person. Each and every one of you people, real people, not a chat room. Dang, you're a beautiful sight, folks. So, a few years ago, I was lucky enough that my friend and fabulous luthier, Martin Fair, at Fairbuilt Guitar Company, and I finally worked out an arrangement about him building a guitar for me. My approach was somewhat novel. I said, everybody who plays one of your guitars lives within like an hour of Loudoun County, and your guitar should be heard in other corners of the country, and by gum, I volunteer to be the guy to do it. So, long story short, when we decided that we would do this project, the last thing I said was the thing that set it off the rails completely, and that was, hey, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool? So many of my songs and stories are from here at home and stuff. I said, you think we could make this guitar out of local native wood? And unfortunately for Marty, he thought about it for a second and said, well, I've always wanted to do that. 2 years later, Marty had built 6 identical guitars because we couldn't decide what the best combination of woods was going to be, so it turned into a science experiment gone completely off the rails. And I got my pick of the litter in a blind test. I wasn't allowed to know which one I got. But the one that I wound up choosing, this one, was made of black walnut from a tree that grew 10 miles away from home. And I thought, this is a really cool story, but a friend of mine who's a filmmaker and a photographer thought it was a cool story too, and she decided to film the whole thing, and they made a little mini doc about it. And my failing in the whole thing, besides asking that completely derailing question, was saying that, golly, a movie, that sounds really good. I've never been in a movie before. I'd love to do that. So about 8 weeks before the movie was to wrap up and the do the premiere at the Arts Center in Herndon, east of us, closer to D.C., she called me up, and I remembered that it was April 1st, because at first I was thinking she was pulling my leg. She said, "So we're ready for the music. What do you got?" the soundtrack to a movie about building a guitar for a singer-songwriter. I got to that party pretty late, but in the songwriting business, that's what we call a red light emergency. It's like, we got to sit down and get this thing done. So I got together with my bandmates that night, and one of them is Les Thompson. Les is the technical director at our local art center in Purcellville at the Franklin Park Art Center, but he's probably better known to the music world for his time as one of the founding members of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and the Will the Circle Be Unbroken album. And all of that is really cool, but when it comes to songwriting together, what it means is that Les grew up in a different time than I did, and sometimes he would say things that I didn't really understand all that well, and this was one of those times, because we're sitting there bouncing ideas around among the four of us, and he says, "Well, you and Marty get to speak for yourselves in the movie, so I think the song should be in the voice of the tree." Wait, don't cut me down? I mean, where's the happy part of this story, right? Now, two guys writing songs is one thing, but the other two members of the band happen to be women, which means they're smarter than us, more thoughtful than us, probably more creative than us, and definitely on this particular occasion that was the case, because Lisa, the drummer, leans over knowingly, winks at Les, and whispers to me simply, "Reincarnation." Oh, why, you might be onto something. I have been a sturdy tree, growing strong for centuries. Roots and branches, rings and pearls, but I want to see the great wide world. Want to see the great wide world. Sheltered creatures, great and small, found a Blue Ridge mountain tall. Listen to my branch birds sing of what I'd see if I had wings, of what I'd see if I had wings. Almost meet the storm, tumble to the forest floor. The smooth cut sand is shaped and stained. By a craftsman's hand I'm born again. By a craftsman's hand I'm born again. Hi-yi-yi-oh. Hi-yi-yi-oh. I've been given singing strings, told my gay church bell rings. Now I travel across this land, and I found my voice in your hands. I found my voice in your hands. Hi-yi-yi-oh. Y'all can sing it with me if you want. Hi-yi-yi-oh. 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 I have been a sturdy tree, growing strong for a century, with roots and branches, rings and pearls. Now I'm off to see the great wide world. I'm off to see the great wide world.
Thank you.
for this gift of being with you today. The final thing I will tell you about my ancestries. My parents caught the itch after they took their DNA tests and found out how much Irish and Northern Ireland and Scotland they have, and that they had living kin in those places. They decided that they wanted to go. And my dad decided that he wanted his kids to go and to leave our families behind. A last great nuclear family vacation. My sister and I knew what we were signing up for, but it became readily apparent that for a trip that was going to happen in May, my dad had already worked out how his suitcase would be packed in November. And my sister and I were expected to come up with regular progress reports about where we were going and what we were doing. In hindsight, it's amazing that it worked out, because we took our type A plus parents to a foreign country, driving around in a small minivan on the wrong side of the road for 16 days, hoping that the nuclear family would not achieve vision. And somehow we managed it. But I have to say, there were a lot of cool experiences that I'm glad we got to share with them along the way, but none quite rivaled meeting Dad's third cousins in the town in County Down in Northern Ireland where our Mcknight family came from. 5 days before we left on this trip, my dad had a new DNA match, and she was clearly a Mcknight, and she emailed me almost right away. And she lives in County Antrim, nearby, not far north of Belfast. And we got to talking and realized how we were related, and it was, wow, that's really cool. And I said, well, we're coming to Ireland in 5 days. And the all caps email that came back was, you're coming to Ireland. We'll meet you in Newtonards. I'll get together with this other cousin who lives there in town, and we'll get it figured out. We'll have the day planned out. All you have to do is show up. We'll take care of the rest. So cool. We have family to go visit Northern Ireland. This is great. And so the big day comes and we meet, and it's amazing. We're walking around the town where my dad's great-great-grandparents were, and 3 of their children are represented amongst this group of cousins that day. So we sat at the restaurant that night, and we were in Ireland close to the summer solstice, so it's late, light, beautiful, like you never want to go to bed because it never gets really, really dark. And we're sitting there at the restaurant, looking around, and I'm just listening to everybody talking. I've got cousins at this table, and I'm thinking, I'm looking out over the Irish Channel towards Scotland, and that's where my family left in 1863 and never came back. And I'm thinking to myself, these 3 children's families sitting at this table in the same place at the same time is probably the first time that this has happened in like 170 years. And how cool is this? So after dinner, Eileen, this cousin, says, and if you're watching, she says, oh, we'd love to hear you play. I said, well, the commissar over here didn't let me pack a guitar. Didn't want to be hauling that around in airports and all the rest of that, so I wish I could, but I've got nothing. She says, oh, but my husband plays and we brought one for you. And I'm like, okay, this we can do. Because in the bar of this restaurant, there is this big old piano, and one of my dad's considerable criteria that he gave my sister and I in November for a trip in May was that we would stay with local people in local places so he could get some flavor for the local culture, but also that there would be a piano so he could unwind after a day in the Irish or Scottish countryside. And I had failed rather miserably for the previous few days, and there's a piano, and let's go, Pop. So we sat in there and we played for a while, and it was great. Now, if you've never been to Northern Ireland, I will tell you this. It's not just the accent, it's the colorful figures of speech, and I didn't really understand much of anything, and all these lovely Northern Ireland people are walking by us and smiling, and I didn't understand much of any of it, but it was fun. And at the end, I'm packing up the guitar, and I'm like, I can't even tell you how happy I am to have had my hands on a guitar that's in the family for a little while. Thank you so much for bringing it. And she says, it goes with you. At this point, I was starting to suspect that the wine that we'd had at dinner was either really good or I clearly had not heard her right, because that would have been insane. What? No, you couldn't have said what I just thought you said. No. It goes with you. My husband's had this guitar here for 20 years. It was made here. We can get another one. We want our American cousin to bring home something of his ancestral homeland. This very guitar. After a lovely rest of the evening with them, when we got back to our Airbnb, I looked up the serial number on the company website. And sure enough, this guitar not only was built in Northern Ireland, it was built in the town of Newtonards, where our family came from. And this, friends, is why I tell you that I am the luckiest guy I know to be here with you this afternoon, to be able to share these stories with you. Thank you. Counting my blessings. Count your blessings, don't count your gold. Don't need money when you're lying cold. You can't buy your way into heaven, I am told. Count your blessings, don't count your gold. Count the good deeds that you've done. Lend your hand to help someone. St. Peter's got his list, he's checking everyone. Count the good deeds that you've done. In spite of all your troubles, all you need is on your back. Believe in all your blessings, don't worry about all you lack. Count the lessons you learn each day. Let them guide you, show you the way. Follow wise words, you won't go astray. Count the lessons you learn each day. Count the blessings, don't count your gold. You don't need money when you're lying cold. You can't buy your way to heaven, I am told. Count your blessings, don't count your gold. Wow, wow, count your blessings, don't count your gold. Thank you all so very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for tuning in. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Are you in the tolerating one right out the door. Okay, one more it is then. Thank you. Golly. Back to the brick. Oh, there you are. Good. Man, thank you so much. I'm sure for the next while, everybody who stands on this stage in front of you is going to be feeling a lot of the same things I am. Gratitude and joy. There we go. Come on down here now. There we go. So, every now and then I write songs for a reason. Sometimes you write songs because they show up. Dear friend of mine passed away a couple of years ago. And he had some time to prepare for it. And I had met him 20 years before that. He is a member of the local Unitarian church. And he was a DJ. And he loved the blues. And I remember I had never been to the Unitarian church. And he invited me to play at the dedication. Now this building in just south of Leesburg was built by the newly freed enslaved people working on Oatlands Plantation. And they worked at night because they'd been working in the fields all day. And one of the members of the church later did a painting of what that might have looked like, you know, of all these families there and the timber frame barn raising and all that kind of style of, and it's this tiny little chapel. And I walked in it that day and I was like, oh my. Because the congregation that had built it had outgrown it and sold it to the Unitarians after about 100 years. People who lived through lynchings, and Jim Crow, and segregation, and all of this hardship, and they brought their hearts and their joys and their sorrows, and they soaked them into these wooden walls, not all that different from these here. And I remember that it was sort of a gloomy day, and when I played a couple of songs during the dedication, and at one point the sun came out and it just exploded through the windows into the chapel, just like it would if it was coming through that window like right now, just off the floor and everything. And I thought, man, that's just an amazing experience. Now this friend of mine, he was a DJ on this AM radio station, and he got me hooked up with this local private school where the librarian was in charge of arts programs, and she had me come in and write songs with third graders. And I was like, okay, this will be fun. And the 2 third grade classes, they wrote these really cool songs together. And I was like, man, we ought to take them up to the recording studio up at Les's place, and let me get a couple of guys and we'll record their songs, and they can like see their song go from ideas we're throwing on a whiteboard to being this recorded thing. And so Chris invited me to take some of the third graders to the radio station to play their songs on the air. And I think to myself, that's the sort of legacy that I might like to leave behind, of having been that person who did that one extra thing to make something just like pop out like something you'll never forget, you know? So he asked Les and I to do the eulogy at his service. And I thought, well, okay. And I thought about what I wanted to say, and I thought, you so appreciated the African-American story in our midst that's underappreciated, and the music and all of that. And I said, maybe what I ought to do is just show up that morning and play something on the resonator guitar and slide and just and see what happens. And so that was my plan on the morning of his memorial service. And I got up, and it's 9 o'clock for a 10 o'clock service, and I'm sitting there in my living room just kind of warming up and noodling. And 15 minutes later, the song is done. It's just poof. Like, okay, I guess you figured out what you wanted me to sing then, huh? And sure enough, while I was playing in that tiny Unitarian church chapel, while I was singing, the sun popped out of the clouds and exploded in that room like, may it be so when it's my time. Time comes, don't shed a tear. When my time comes, don't shed a tear. God, all I need is beautiful here. When my time comes, raise your voice and sing. When my time comes, raise your voice and sing. Sound just like angels when that joyful noise rings. Time comes, hold out your hand. When my time comes, hold out your hand. Don't you worry about me, lift up your fellow man and woman too. When my time comes, yeah, ring them bells. When my time comes, ring them bells. Till we meet again, fare thee well. Thank you for coming, everybody. Thanks for having me.